It's my honor and privilege to welcome you to a weekly time with you, a weekly appointment with you at the BW Education Wednesday Wisdom. We've been doing this for exactly a year to this date, and we're happy to be back with you. We discuss various issues that are impacting the education sector, the education domain. We bring in leaders from various backgrounds in education. And today we have a diverse set of leaders from across the country. In no particular order, let me welcome Dr. T.G. Sitharam, who is the director of the IIT Guwahati. Welcome, Dr. Sitharam. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Let me welcome Mr. Raghav Gupta, who's the managing director, India and subcontinent for Coursera. Coursera is among the leading edutech platform. I don't have to tell you that. Let me also welcome Dr. Vishal Singh, who's the principal of the A.D. Patel Institute of Technology. Welcome, Dr. Singh. Let me also welcome Dr. Raghuram ji, who's the director of Pilani of the KK Birla Goa campus. Clearly, I don't know whether you go to Goa for education or for entertainment. I'm confused, but we'll figure that out in a while. And last but not the least, let me welcome Dr. Sudhir Jain, who's the director of the IIT Gandhipur and Gandhinagar. Today, with these eminent gentlemen, we're going to discuss Education 4.0, the role of industry partnerships and curricula. I think the last 12 months have made industry interaction easier because the geographical boundaries have gone away, and it has necessitated that we all look at the kind of courses we have and we exploit the power of content that is available and exploit the power of partnership. So let me start by getting Dr. Sudhir Jain to make his opening comments on how Education 4.0 can help us achieve the goals that the new education policy, the national education policy has, and what is the role of industry partnerships in this, and how can the curricula keep pace? Dr. Sudhir Jain.
Yeah, so thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts. My thought is that regardless of what education, what is in humanities or engineering or whatever, I think the first purpose is to make the person a better person, to prepare the person for life, for a successful life. And to my mind, therefore, if you look at it from industry perspective, if you look at it from individual's perspective, I would like to put the priority in the educational experience of a student when he comes to my college is values, attitudes, life skills, and finally the subject. So that is how we see at IIT Gandhinagar. And that is how we prepare our students. We start out with giving them a 5-week foundation program where we run almost like a boot camp, focusing on values and attitudes, life skills. We also have a very strong focus on writing courses. We started to realize that our students are very, very bright, but they are very poor in writing, regardless of whether they went to good schools or their English is good. So things like that. So to my mind, we need to look at education in a very, very holistic manner, in a very broad manner. And that is how we look at it at IIT.
Thank you so much for being so specific and so short. And we'll bring you in the conversation again. Let me bring in Dr. Vishal Singh into the conversation. You'll have to unmute yourself. Dr. Singh, your opening comments.
Very good afternoon to all esteemed panel here. We are in central part of Gujarat, the birthplace of Sardar Patel. Our college is part of CVM University. As central government has already announced advent of new education policy, this particular discussion is happening at a very right moment. The national education policy is going to act as the catalyst to bring about the changes which would help us drift towards education 4.0. We all know that education that is being imparted to the students have to be ultimately relevant in the field. Many times, industry has issues with the quality of product that is available to them. As Dr. Jain has already pointed out, holistic development of the student is one of the key parameters And in addition to that, we need to cover up the gap between curriculum and the industry. National education policy provides ample opportunities by reforming the curriculum per se, bringing in platforms like MOOCs and other learning opportunities that can go as the building block for the better learning of the student. That's all from my side.
Thank you so much, Dr. Singh. Let me bring in Professor Raghuram ji from BITS Pilani Goa campus. Your opening comments.
See, as you rightly pointed out, the new education policy gives an emphasis on holistic development. Dr. Jain correctly pointed out that it is not just the classroom engineering or another science curriculum. You need to inculcate the habit of values and communication skills, etc. So I can give two examples from my institute's experience, because that makes more sense from speaking from experience. One is what is called the practice school. This is where the students spend 7.5 months in the industry. This started in 1970s. This was a model where we today place around 2,000 students in industries working on projects. But it is not like an internship where somebody goes and then comes back with the certificate. What we have done is, at the end of 2 years, students spend 2 months in an industry, going around and looking at the finance department, the HR department, the shop floor, and talking to the workers and making a report, having seminars, talking about their experience to the colleagues, and then evaluating that. So they're just not working on a project and then submitting a report. So that is one exposure to industry where you suddenly realize that it is much more than the textbook. You need to interact with people. The second part, of course, what we call as a practice school 2, is where a student works on a project, but he's prepared with this understanding of an industrial setup at the beginning. So that is one way of getting this exposure to students in an industrial environment. That is one. Second, in the holistic development in a institution like BITS Pilani, it's a little more easier because we are a fully residential institute. So a lot of learning happens outside the classroom. This is a buzzword today, that learning is not now only limited to the classroom. Yes, pandemic has forced it on us to do online teaching. So while teaching can happen in online or theory classrooms, etc., the essential component of learning in the education 4.0 as we go forward will happen in groups, not necessarily in the classroom, outside the classroom. So this is something which we build among our students. Batra, you know about Oasis as a cultural festival, but if you have seen that, there's a lot of learning.
Professor Raghuram is referring to the cultural festival of BITS Pilani. I was just before the conversation started, I was saying that I've been to Oasis and I've participated Oasis for 2 years. So he's talking about how face-to-face interaction and the life on campus is an integral part of education. I think that's what he's referring to.
Exactly. So you would have seen the students working on arts, photography, then drama, theater, all kinds of things in that 4 or 5 days. No classwork in the traditional sense is held, but then the students learn a lot. Similarly, we have what is called APAC, which is a technical festival. Each campus has its own versions of that. So this is second level of, where we allow students to do. The third point is, I think engineering institutions have to be blamed that we give too much emphasis on the curriculum, focus on the discipline. The first 1 or 2 years, we need to give them a lot of input in sciences, humanities, arts, literature, and in technology, across the disciplines. So that is something which has to become part of the curriculum. As we go to Industry 4.0 or Education 4.0 that we talk about today, this broad-based education in the first 1 year is going to be essential. The last point is, if you see the national education policy, it talks about, even in the school system, bringing the local artisans into the schools and making them teach the students. So that occasion, if it should be It's already trained there. What is that higher education has to offer? So we have much more greater responsibility to create projects which comes from the society around us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you made very important points, and we'll come back to you. But let me bring in Mr. Raghav Gupta, because Mr. Raghav Gupta, he's saying that real life learning happens a lot on the campus. Online has a role to play, and it has got enhanced over the last 12 months. But essentially, education is still about face-to-face interactions. That's what he is in a nutshell saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And Anurag, before I comment on that, it might be helpful just to step back a little bit and also talk about what's happening in industry at large, because I think that has a big implication for higher education as well. As Coursera, we work with about 6,000 institutions. And so we get a ringside view of what's changing in industry. And industry has been calling this double disruption. It's a combination of automation, which was happening, and COVID-19 that we've seen over the last year or so. So at least from a lot of work with industry, we are seeing that there will be lesser jobs available in the future. The kind of skills that industry is looking for in their employees is changing. 50% of companies are continuing to say that. Many companies, including mine, are saying even after COVID goes away, we will significantly continue to work from home. People will not come back to office full time. And I think almost 90% companies are saying we are digitalizing a lot more than we were before. I was looking at the top 10 skills that working professionals learned on the Coursera platform in 2019 and comparing those to 2020. And in 2019, we found that a lot of the skills that people were learning were largely technology and data science and business skills. But in 2020, the top skills became writing, mindfulness, gratitude, and learning. So we found that, this need because of the pandemic, to learn functional skills and digital skills and technology skills have been coupled quite significantly with human skills. And I think Professor Jain spoke about that. The director of BITS, Pilani, spoke about that as well. So I think at least our view is from industry that skills are definitely changing. And at least in our view, working with our partner universities, there are close to 150 top universities around the world and in India that we partner with. There are possibly three implications of automation and COVID-19 that we see for universities. One, like I said, the changing mix of jobs and skills calls out for the need to adapt the curriculum for sure. Second, many employers are saying that along with degrees, they're looking for skills as well. And there is willingness to consider micro-credentials. So that might be a new big opportunity from a higher education.
I like the word micro-credentials.
And then as a response to COVID-19, there has been much wider recognition of the potential value of online delivery, not just the live online, but completely async online because of lower cost, because of flexibility, because of convenience. And I think that impact is likely to be here to stay going forward as well.
Thank you so much, Raghav, for again giving in specific inputs. And you Dr. Jain rightly said at the start, and then both Dr. Singh and Professor Raghuram agreed to that. The skills have to go beyond coding. They have to go beyond technology, beyond AI, ML, those kind of things. And even in your last conversation with us, you talked about how there are top 7, 4 were behavioral courses, so to say, skill-based, attitude-based. You talked about communication. You talked about mindfulness. These 2 I remember out of. Which were the other 2 in the top 7?
Gratitude was one of them as well. And also meditation. I mean, we've seen meditation
so clearly,
a top skill as well.
That's data. That's not an opinion. That's data from the offtake of courses. Let me, in this segment, bring in the director of IIT Guwahati for his opening comments, and then I'll start in the second round with him. So, Dr. T.G. Sitharam, your comments in terms of Education 4.0. How can we bring in industry partnerships, and what is the change in curricula that is needed?
Thank you, Dr. Batra, and also very distinguished panel, and also all the people who are listening to this debate. how the industry and university collaboration will drive basically the research and development and innovation. See, end of the day, all these, we are in passing the pandemic, and human skills are important, definitely. But at the end of the day, what does an industry look for? They look for some innovation, some ideas, new ideas. They're really hungry for ideas. These ideas have to come from young people at the institutes of that kind. So these are basically mutually beneficial partnerships. Please understand, this is both are would like to basically develop a partnership to produce a groundbreaking research and development and innovation that solves complex problems of the societal, which will be beneficial to the society, and also drives the economic growth for the nation and creates a more skilled workforce. So this is, I think, the bottom line. Please understand. So all we are going through the difficult phases now. Definitely, we will forget maybe a year down the road. But end of the day, industry looks for research and development and innovation. This innovation can happen only with partnerships with young students and also the faculty of the institute, who are really into a different phase than the industry representatives itself. So it's not about just the money. It is not just about the ideas. It is a synergy between these two institutes which drives the innovation. At the end of the day, we want the entire, we need to see a product coming out of these collaborations. And this industry-university collaboration is not very, anyway, new. It dates back to 70s, where several universities have got up. But what really has to happen is, you should actually, these should work, particularly between that university and that industry. Then only it will be called as a successful model. So our faculty need to get on and try to talk to each one of those industrial leaders. So what we have done at IIT Guwahati, see, we have actually forcefully brought 3 advisors for every department, including humanities, from the industry. Successful industrialists has brought as advisors to department so that curriculum changes can happen slowly over a period of time with discussions. And we've also brought in practicing professors from the industry to teach part of the course with the faculty. So that means there will be a synergy between the faculty and the industry leaders would happen. Then, all these collaboration will have a meaning, and they will start working together. That's what I strongly feel, that Industry 4.4 to flourish in India, we need to develop partnerships. This partnership should happen people to people more. And our students should go as interns, and industry people should come as externs to the universities and start working with us, and also visit our laboratories and look at it, all these things. Definitely online, due to pandemic, online has come in, and many things which we can do online as well. More than 50% of the work can be done online as well. So that will actually gives you much more flexibility for more collaboration, more interaction, and more exchange of ideas. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You were the last in this segment, but you made it very powerful and very interesting. Let me start with you this time. Now, you are all education leaders. You have the power to implement what you believe in and what you are saying on this show. Tell us, in the last 12 months of your being, or in the last 6 months, what have you done to be able to embrace what you're saying, to implement what you're saying? I'll take this to each one of you. Let me start with you this time.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Batra. I think, IIT Guwahati, in the last 1 year, we have done very well, both in ranking as well. So we have gone into the top 100 of the world universities, even though we are the 6th IIT started, and in a difficult area like Northeast in Guwahati. Okay. But, what we have done in the last 1 year is I have started a school of data sciences and artificial intelligence, completely funded by a philanthropist from America. Okay. And we are starting the July 2021 BTech program in data science and artificial intelligence. And which will also, we are already running a master's program. We are also starting a PhD program. That means a complete new school has been created during this pandemic. And we are planning, already we started hiring faculty for this data sciences and AI. This Mehta Family Foundation from Houston has come to us support. The second one, what we have done is we have started already discussing and finalizing through our Senate and board is the School of Healthcare, Health Sciences and Technologies. School of Health Sciences and Technologies. There are a lot of faculty actually in biosciences, bioengineering. IIT Guwahati has 11 departments and 5 different centers. So now we have put together and started working with a lot of doctors and in a affordable healthcare. So we have started a School of Health Sciences and Technologies that is actually going to our Senate as well as to the board. Then we have converted our school Center for Rural Technologies to School of Agro and Rural Technologies. Okay, this center is existing from last 5 years. We have made a very great inroads to the northeast small villages with our technologies like power looms and very simple nut crackers. How to really break the areca nut. I think very simple technologies. We have reached out to the villages, and this group now came up with an idea that will let us have a School of Agro and Rural Technologies, because agro technologies are going to drive our economy. So, because we are still an agriculture-based country. So, these are the three, and I have started a new industry interaction group itself. We have created a group called Industry Interaction and Special Initiatives at IIT Guwahati, which is headed by a new dean, which is actually started during this pandemic. We have signed 12 companies signed the contract to come and place themselves in our campus. So we have a research park building which is under construction, but we had additional space, so we have provided 12 companies, and we have also signed a lot of technology transfers. Okay, one of the technology transfers I've just done is Kareena Kapoor has given an advertisement for a spray against corona. Okay. So a lot of new ideas have come in, which they have made it very, very successful. So like this, I can go on. So maybe I'll stop to give others a chance to love to listen.
No, I think these examples are good. I like the fact that you already implemented them. Yeah, exactly. I like the fact that you already implemented them. And clearly in the new education policy, and when you talk of education 4.0, you're talking of an integrative curriculum. You're already doing that. You've been also very tactical and strategic, both in terms of taking up new areas, new domains that are seeing more and more traction. So clearly that's the way forward when it comes to education 4.0. Let me bring in Dr. Sudhir Jain again. Dr. Sudhir Jain, what have you done in IIT Gandhinagar to be able to implement your vision as per your opening comments and what you see in the environment? If you could share with the audience what all you've implemented and are also planning to do in future. Dr. Jain, you'll have to unmute yourself, Dr. Jain.
Batraji, the way we see it is that today everybody is talking about data, but yesterday they were talking something else. 46 years back when I went to study at Roorkee, I had to buy a slide rule. And by the time I finished Roorkee, we had all bought calculators. What I'm trying to say is that the technology will change. What is the fashion today, what is the need today will not be the need tomorrow. And therefore, our focus has been entirely that students must learn to learn. Because whatever I will teach them today, after 5 years, after 10 years, after 15 years, they will have to relearn. That is number one, because technology is changing. Number two, the job skills that are needed for me today as director of the institute are totally different from the skill sets that I needed as a professor. And therefore, even as you grow in your own career, you will need totally different skill sets. So we believe that learning to learn is the most important aspect of our educational experience. And for that, one of the rules we follow is teach less. Don't teach too much. Let the students internalize, let the students digest, let the students enjoy it and not overfeed them. There are many things that we used to do, we have been doing. One of the things that we were very particular about was giving our students an opportunity to do two things. One is about 40% of our undergraduates used to travel outside India in summer for research internship. That was one side. They will go to eminent professors' laboratories in US, in Europe, in Japan, everywhere, and do summer research. And the other side was that some similar number, about 40 to 45% students would travel around the country in a summer break on 38,000 rupees over 42 days. No air-conditioned train allowed, no aircraft allowed. So they were having to spend 900 rupees budget per day for food, for their lodging, and for their train and sightseeing. And that was a very humbling experience for them to understand what India is all about. Both these programs got interrupted because of the pandemic, right? Both of those. But what we did very quickly as the pandemic started was that our Senate approved that we will give so many credits for graduation if the students would do online courses. I'm very happy Raghav Gupta is there in this panel. His company was very, very supportive. And in fact, my colleagues, they curated 180 online courses in the month of April and made that list available to the students and said, if you do any of these 180 courses, each course, we will give you 1 credit, 2 credit, 3 credit. So my faculty assigned credit for those courses. And I was delighted that 60% of my students actually did online courses for certificate and claimed credit from IIT Gandhinagar. And that was our way of making them learn to learn without the teacher, without a headmaster, a policeman sitting on top of their head, making them learn. We started yet another thing during the pandemic. And we said, if my professor is sitting in Ahmedabad, Gandhinagar, and teaching a student sitting in Guwahati or in Kerala or wherever, then why can't the faculty be teaching in South America or in Japan and teaching the class? So we said to ourselves that every semester we must have at least...
Absolutely. You can source faculty from anywhere in the world.
Not only source, but you bring diversity of experiences. You bring different perspectives. Now the student is learning from somebody whose even English accent he is trying to understand, right? So the idea here was that we said to ourselves, every semester we must have at least 10 courses taught by faculty sitting outside India. Out of those, 2 or 3 might be of Indian origin, people from non-Indian origin background. So I think this has been a very, very interesting 1 year for us. Certain things which we are very proud of, we couldn't continue. We had to cancel them for the time being. But we started several new things, which I think have been very, very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Jain, for giving us specific input. Let me bring in Raghav before I bring in Dr. Vishal Singh and Professor Raghuram Ji into the conversation. Raghav, Dr. Jain was appreciative of the role Coursera is playing in enabling this graduation to education 4.0 or whatever you want to call it. Give us a sense of what is yet to come. What do you think these educational institutions can do, and what can these educational leaders do to build on what they've done in the last 12 months?
I think if we think about the wider picture in the country, can you hear me all right? I think you can, right? Yeah.
Yes,
so I was saying if you think about the wider picture in the country in the context of what the NEP says as well, we have about 35, 38 million students in higher education. Idea is to double it by 2035. I don't think we are going to do this by opening that many more campuses, by creating that many more faculty members. I think one thing which I find interesting is when I look at one of the Coursera early partner universities, which is University of Michigan. And University of Michigan today has 44,000 students on campus. They have a 100 people department that creates online content. And today that online content reaches about 2.5 million learners around the world, with India being the second largest country after the US in terms of learner base. And what Professor Jain spoke about, which is, adoption of Coursera content at IIT Gandhinagar, is really interesting because I think his focus on learning to learn is very interesting because the #1 course on Coursera, or I should say amongst the top 3 courses on Coursera globally, is called Learning How to Learn. And last year we saw millions of students in the country, take online content because of what COVID kind of did. My hope and aspiration is that I think with the top institutions in the country, along with them serving on-campus students, I think going forward, we have the opportunity for these institutions to create courses for use in other parts of the world as well. What Professor Sitharam spoke about, the new BTech in data science and AI. Don't limit that to only students on campus, but let's take it to people around the world via an online medium. And I think we will see a lot more explosion in the fully online degree space as well. The first example has been what we've seen with IIT Madras's BSc Data Science. But I think in the future, chances are that this expansion of 38 million students in India in higher education to possibly double that in the next 10, 15 years, I think a large share of that can be contributed, given the kind of adoption that we've seen in the last 1 year with online because of COVID as well.
Thank you so much, Raghav, for giving us a glimpse into the future, what the possibilities are, and what could these educational institutions and leaders do. Let me bring in Dr. Vishal Singh and Professor Raghuram ji into the conversation back again. Dr. Vishal Singh, give us what you are doing currently to embrace the vision that all of you have shared, and what do you think will happen in future specifically to your own institution? First, Dr. Vishal Singh, and then Professor Raghuram. Dr. Singh? Dr. Singh, go ahead.
Hello. Am I audible? Yes.
Yes, you're. Yes, you are.
Last 1 year has been challenging, and all of us, whether teachers, students, institutions, universities, have been reinventing. The online solutions available have been a great help to the students and to the teachers also. In time to come, as we gear up for the Industry 4.0, across various courses, curriculums are being upgraded, and the features related to Internet of Things, Industrial Internet of Things, Artificial Intelligence, Data Sciences, these domains are finding prominence across any branch of engineering. Our endeavor is that how can we build these features into the conventional mindset in different domains. There is a lot of churning currently going on. We are also taking help of various industrial experts. And the way forward is that we have to integrate different domains within engineering to make a sustainable engineer so that he is useful and is able to provide solutions for the society at large. Another important dimension that we have taken up this year is that we have started up a innovation and startup center at CVM University, inaugurated by Bhupen Singh Churasama sir, Education Minister, Gujarat State, wherein we are constantly motivating the young minds to take risks, and all these risks are being covered by Institute and the SSIP cell Gujarat State. So enough funding are being provided to the students to experiment, innovate, fail early, so that in time to come, we would have many entrepreneurs who would have startups and fulfill the vision of creating job creators rather than job seekers. So this is what we are currently building in our ecosystem and encouraging innovation, startups, and cross-domain features into the curriculums and training.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. You're rightly talking about entrepreneurship education, skill-based education, talking of collaborativeness. You're talking of creating more employers than employees, as we traditionally said, job givers rather than job takers. And clearly your own efforts in terms of making that happen is very evident from what you've shared with us. Professor Raghuram ji, BITS Pilani Goa campus is a relatively new campus as compared to BITS Pilani. Now, does that make your job to implement what you want to implement in terms of education 4.0 easier or tougher? Professor Raghuram ji?
Yeah, Dr. Bhatta, yeah, I hope you can hear me. One of the smoothest thing that happened, of course, we are...
Yes, we can hear you. So, you're a relatively newer campus as compared to your parent campus, so to say. Does it make your job easier or tougher?
No, we are 2004, so 16 years is quite a long time to, we are now Hyderabad, Goa and Pilani campus, they're all now full-fledged, and we run almost independent in terms of the operations, but we are under one single university and different campuses. So being in Goa, Goa is now becoming an education hub. As you know, you have IIT coming up, there's a NIT here, and BITS Goa. Government is putting a lot of money in supporting higher education in Goa. So it's no more just a tourist destination. So that's not an issue. Being in Goa, higher education, we are perhaps in the right place for some areas. I'll give one or two examples. Just to give you 2 pointers, how did the institute like us respond to this pandemic challenge, and how did the industry respond? I gave you the example of practice school where we sent students to industries. While our faculty members within 3 days shifted every physical classroom to online classroom because we had the advantage of being IT savvy, we could do it in 3 days. By the time we closed the campus, students reached home, the classes were all online. We were lucky, but then interestingly, we had to place around 2,000 students in industries during the summer. And we could place all these 2,000 students through an online model. This is how the industry responded, which was a little beyond our expectation. So even today, when students have to do these projects with industries, they are working from home, just like their employees, interacting with our faculty members and industry mentors. So this is a model which gives a lot of satisfaction as experience that industries also equivalently respond to support higher education institutes in times of stress. Another point which I want to make is, again, some of you may know, BITS Pilani offers what is called a work integrated learning programs. If you see the national education policy, it talks about letting people complete 2 years in the college and then go back to industry, work and come back. So essentially, if Industry 4.0 is a place where technology will exponentially grow, you can't teach everything or prepare everything in a 4-year program. So people have to come back to the colleges and refresh. What we do in BITS Pilani is through what is called work integrated learning programs. We have around 20,000 people working for degree of BITS Pilani from industries. Interestingly, during this year, industry did not reduce the number of people that they sponsored. They still want their people to use this time to enhance their knowledge. And manpower upgradation in terms of the technology and other knowledge is paramount for industries, and they will support in all times, irrespective of the stress that they face, is very clearly demonstrated through this program. As you see, the next coming year, we have sufficient interest from industries. In fact, possibly more than what they were ready to do earlier. So I'm very confident that this model of industry and university working together is something. We have working models. Of course, IITs have their own model. BITS Pilani has its own model. The challenge that we'll face will be the second level or third level of institutions. National education policy talks about the vast number of people getting exposed to this. How to handle that is something for the future. But for institutions like us, I will give 2 examples what we did in the last 2 years to prepare ourselves for the future. See, we have set up incubation centers through alumni support, etc., using this time to artificial intelligence, augment AR, that is augmented reality, and then machine language learning, machine this thing, etc. These centers are being created during this time with the discussion with the alumni. Now, I should acknowledge that there is something which is lacking today because of purely online. I am not being very traditional in my outlook, but if students cannot come to the campus and spend substantial amount of time working with each other and interacting with the faculty, this education will not be complete. We thought it will be ready by this time when we are seeing the second wave. But going forward, this is some online will be a part and parcel of the education system. But then we have to see how best we, or how not to go back to the old system, but how best we use the new pedagogies to enable people working in group, hands-on in the classroom, whatever we call. So that is what we are getting prepared, and I'm confident that it will happen.
Thank you so much. Now let me bring Raghav again into the conversation. Raghav, you heard all of that. Now, clearly, they've shown willingness to embrace the future, so to say, willingness to embrace the new technologies, and they've actually implemented what they're talking of. So it's not, it's not just talk on a conference, but they're actually doing. And tell me, and I asked you last time, what do you think they can do more? Let me, in that spirit, again ask you, what should they prepare for in the future? Because sometimes when we have legacy businesses, legacy ways of operating, we may miss the mega trends of future, or we may not think they're big enough. So our adoption sometimes is slow. So what do you think they can do to make sure they're ahead of the curve? They're ahead of other institutions.
Anurag, I have a list of 5 points, and it might take a little bit long to share all of them. I'll try and share just some of them.
I love listicles, Raghav. I read a lot of listicles, and I love listicles. So please go ahead, give us those 5 points.
So I'll pick on what Professor Jain said first. I think we are seeing a situation where, all of us have grown up learning from faculty in our own institutions. I think the future is going to be possibly 50, 60, 70% of learning continuing to happen from our institutions, but 30, 40% happening from the best faculty around the world. So I think we will see on-campus students benefiting from learning from faculty around the world. And I think that will happen online. I think the second thing that we can look at is industries very hungry for micro-credentials from top universities. And I think top universities in the country should definitely look like what are the new skills that industry is looking for, and is there an opportunity to create some of those micro-credentials. I think that is something which is a big requirement, and we work with some of the largest companies who are asking for this. Third, I think, like I was saying earlier, we've all spoken about online playing a role for on-campus students. I don't think we've spoken a lot about fully online degrees. We've seen that in other parts of the world. In countries like the US, almost 30% of all master's students are actually doing fully online degrees. I think in India, we might have online degrees in the master's space and some in the bachelor's space as well, where maybe a large chunk of it, 70, 80, 90% is online, but there is a live on-campus component as well. But I think these online degrees can expand the kind of reach that our top institutions have. Why should IIT Gandhinagar be only teaching a few thousand students? Why not, 50, 100,000 students? And I think the way to do that is via making these degrees accessible online. And I would say the last piece here is the bedrock of all of this happening is an appreciation of the change and the pace at which change is happening around us. Anurag, I've said this to you earlier, that in February last year, we've seen on the Coursera platform that there were 30 universities using the Coursera for Campus platform. And today that is 4,000 institutions. So within this 12-month period, we've seen fairly massive change happening. And my sense is that we will see similar rapid change in the next couple of years as well.
Thank you so much. There are lots of comments, lots of questions. Let me get the closing remarks from each one of you, and then I'll get the questions in and do a final set of remarks. Let me get Dr. Vishal Singh first. Dr. Vishal Singh, if you had to predict one or two things for the future, what would those be? and I'm assuming that you will embrace those and be ahead of the curve. What are the one or two big trends you see happening in the immediate future, 6 months, 12 months kind of future?
Anurag, in the time to come, every institute would have to embrace the point that whatever activities are being done for training the students are ultimately benefiting society and industry at large. Working in compartments and shells may not yield the results. People need to collaborate, compete to excel, because we are no more living in a local market. Whatever actions we do, whatever technologies we develop have to be global in nature. So again, not only within the country, but across the globe, we need to create partnerships, collaborations, and this is the way forward. The current economy will proceed on the basis of growth of knowledge, which needs to be shared amongst the members so that it will flourish and flourish fast.
Thank you so much. Raghav, it is deja vu, right? Some of the, you talked about from a certain number you've grown by almost 200%, right? Now the number 4,000 universities and educational institutions using Coursera platform. So I use in April 2020, I talked about the 3 C's of doing education and business. The 3 C's were being collaborative, being contactless, and very importantly, being compassionate. So being collaborative, being contactless, being compassionate. And when I'm thinking of education 4.0 in terms of collaboration with the industry, and I'm thinking in terms of integration of new courses with existing courses, revamping old courses, introducing courses that were not there, I really see that the compassion quotient, Raghav talked about the course on mindfulness. He talked about the course on gratitude. He talked about the course on communication. I think those are courses that have more possible impact along with the technical courses. So thank you, Dr. Singh, for making those comments. Dr. Jain, what are the one or two predictions that you have for the future?
Dr. Batra, I don't know the future, but let me throw an idea to you. Have you any recollection that in last 10 or 20 or 25 years, you have heard any academic leader, any politician, any bureaucrat make a speech that India has done well in education? I have not.
No.
Okay.
In fact, just to support your point, we said if we improve the quality and kind of education we have, we should be able to improve everything that we have. One. And second, we've said that the education ministry and the education minister should be the most, innovative, transformative, disruptive minister and ministry we should have. If we can do these two, I think we can improve whatever we do in India. So you're right. I'm supporting what you're saying.
Okay. So if we all agree that nobody knows the way education is done, obviously what we are doing is not right. Obviously, if we keep doing more of that, it will not lead to the future somebody standing up and saying India has now done well. I don't expect that the way we are going in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, we will hear politicians, bureaucrats, or academic leaders to make a speech that India has now done well in last 10 years. Wow, very good. So that is not going to happen. Now, why is it so? To my mind,
why are you so pessimistic? I was going to ask you. Why are you so pessimistic? I thought with the change.
I'm going by facts. Because, see, I'm in education business for 36 years. For last 12 years, I have been a head of an institution and I have attended a lot of educational conferences. And I cannot recall a single place where anybody stood up on a dais and said, wow, India has done well. Right? So my point is this, that unless we really identify the problem and have the courage to accept that problem, we are not going to solve it. And what is that problem? That problem is that our entire focus on education is too much on skill that is needed for the first job.
Yeah, so you're saying, I think beautiful. You said too much emphasis on the skills needed for the first job. So it's not on, it is a lot on employability, but not for life, but for immediate first job. We have to focus on learning for life.
Now, to my mind, you can meet a lot of senior officers, bureaucrats, industry leaders. They lack problem solving. They need somebody to give them a circular. They need somebody to give a letter from Delhi, from Gandhinagar, from Lucknow, from Patna, from Rajdhani, or somebody. Somebody has to give them direction. They are good slaves. They are senior officers. They are senior academic leaders. Somebody has to tell a university vice chancellor how to recruit a faculty. They're not solving the problem. If you talk to a university head and say, boss, you have students complaining about dirty toilets, right? Are they able to solve that? If you go to a university head and say, look, your students are complaining that the food is bad, solve that problem. The answer is that unless we change our focus on teaching to solve problems, and for that the university heads have to start solving the problems, for that they need to think empowered and autonomous enough to solve those problems, right? To me, there is a very fundamental issue here. But having said that, I would say that if today I have a wish list, that what I would like a typical IIT like Gandhinagar or other peer institutions to do, I would say things like teamwork, things like self-management, communication, critical thinking, innovative performance, and conscientious citizenship. Unless you bring all of that into a student's learning experience, I think you will continue to produce technicians of some sort who are robots, who are humans, who can write the program, who can code a problem, who can make the boss happy because they can program something in 10 hours while somebody else will code it in 20 hours. But they are not going to solve the big problems. They are not going to take India to a higher orbit. And I think this is a crisis that we will have in our economics. It will have crisis in our defense. It will have crisis in every facet of India. If today, you imagine the cell phone that I have, I change it every 3 years, 2 years. My iPad is changed every 2-3 years. My laptop is changed every 2-3 years. And who makes money? I
change my hairstyle every 2-3 years.
And who makes money out of it? Your hairstyle is only 100 rupees. In IIT Gandhinagar campus, 60 rupees for hairstyle. But my laptop, my iPad, my cell phone, imagine how much.
Point is, we need to upgrade from time to time. And we are not doing that in education. That's the larger point you're saying.
No, I think I put it wrongly. I'm saying East India Company needed to send some young British to exploit India. Today, people sitting in China or in San Francisco can actually make money without having to come to India, where I need to send money every 1 year to change my device. That's what I'm trying to say, that there will be a different type of colonialism by the big companies, by the technology companies, which India will be prone to if we don't solve our educational enterprise challenge.
Thank you so much. I think you raised it nail on its head. I think we need to overhaul what we are doing. We need to have a new mindset and we need to be bold. I think what you're telling me is we need to be bold in the reform we need to bring in education, new education policy in the right direction. We need now to implement it. Professor Raghuram ji, your closing comments, and then last I'll go to the IIT Guwahati director.
Thank you. I'll make 2 points. One on pedagogy, the other one is on industry and its participation with the universities. As my closing comments. One is I teach a course on communication systems for engineering students, electronics engineering students. Now, one of the challenges as we go forward will be all these existing classic textbooks will become a bit of outdated. Coursera, for example, I should acknowledge this fact, Raghav. Coursera came and then announced to us that we will make it free for your students for next 6 months. And suddenly our students were thrilled. I don't know exactly how many courses they did with the Coursera, but initially this thing around 300 students got immediately joining and learning from this. So there is so much of things there in the learning space in edX or Coursera or Udemy. Now the point is, those teachings, they have to be slightly different from the classical approach. Now, what I mean is, if I'm teaching a course in, let us say, communications, electronic communication, The textbook traditional approach will be chapter 1, where I will introduce the basics, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 5, 10, 11, 12. Now, I have to, you talked about disruption. I have to talk about the last chapter first and then go back. How do I create an interest in the students? I have to take my mobile and then break it open and say, this is what it is. Then to understand the antenna there, why it is so small, I have to go back into certain things. That is where I generate the interest and then go back. I think one of the challenges the teachers will face in this online education, the skill-oriented teaching is this approach, that you can't just go by the chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 approach. You need to disrupt it and then approach it differently. That is one thing which excites me. And second point that I want to make is in terms of, because the focus here today is on industry-university linkage. I think industry has to start by investing or putting money into universities. I think government has not done sufficient to encourage. There are new CSR policies, etc. I think government has to aggressively create new laws where industries can actually put money into universities. If you go to Germany as an example, 2/3 of the R&D investment comes from the industries. In India, most of the leading institutions, even leading institutions, heavily depend on the funding comes for research from government agencies. If industries start putting money into universities to support research, I am sure, because we have more answerable to industries, they look for time-bound answers. So that will create an ecosystem in the universities where students and professors will look at real-time problems and then solve real-life problems and then solve them. I think industries have to put more money. And the third point is, when we evaluate the performance of a faculty or a student, we can't just look at research as in terms of number of publications. Today, it has created another big elephant where people just want to publish papers. You know, first year, second year student, he want to publish in a conference, and they get away with that. I think the focus has to be more creating IP and then patents. So industries have to put money on this and support higher education institutions.
Thank you so much.
I am speaking from the private institutions perspective more so.
I think money is a part of the solution, but it is not the entire solution. That's what I would say. Let me bring in Professor from IIT Guwahati. Sir, your final comments.
Yeah, thank you. You see, we to really propel education 4.0 in India, industry partnership and curriculum changes with skill-based learning is very key. To establish and maintain solid industry partnerships, our faculty need to be trained. They should think and act like entrepreneurs. Unless we do that, you see, we have a very low quality faculty, they cannot be able to really establish an industry traction. They need to actively seek out new customers, that is, new industry partners, developing new sustainable business models. So there should be also a little bit of learn to do partnerships. And also there should be sort of a business developers as well. And they also look at the budgets, how to really estimate. So our faculty also have to be trained to go to that level of, where they can attract funding from the industry. Nurturing potential industry partner is not very easy. It's a very long haul actually, because they will, when they put in money, they will ask you, what is that I get back? So it requires fostering authentic connections between the industry as well as the faculty. When things go well between the industry and the university collaboration, then definitely is a classic win-win. You can see some of the IITs are doing it. Why? Because it is the individuals more than institutions. The individuals who connect with the industry make that program very successful. See, I completely agree with Raghav on the kind of education and the second part. But online degrees have to come in. They have to come in because the kind of numbers what we are talking about, all 23 IITs, 14,000 students, is really not the way. So when there is a talent, we need that talent to go to other. But how do we do that without affecting the quality of our BTech degrees which are offered by IITs. That is one thing we need to also think about. So one is the virtual labs, because this pandemic, I don't know how long it's going to end. We need to look at how to really create virtual labs, because we are going to be in engineering discipline. So people should feel, what they are doing. So at least we should give them an access through the AI and other technologies. We have to give an access for them to operate, they do things on their own virtually as well. So there is a fantastic, effort by IIT Guwahati on the virtual lab side. A lot of engineering courses this pandemic, they're converted into virtual labs. Some of you are interested, they should look at it. So one is the business part. How do you really train our faculty to learn and do the business tactics? That's very important. And then the relationship management between the industry representatives and interpersonal communication, as Raghav was saying, is very, very important, because many of our students come from very remote areas and remote districts and remote villages of India, where they will, when they come to campuses, even to IITs, they would not be able to communicate in English. So we might have to really start slow. That is where new education policy, giving them an exposure in their mother tongue, for maybe a semester to handle is also becomes so important. So finally, at the end of the day, whatever we do, we should benefit the society. So while giving research and access to commercial opportunities and students to a chance to learn and innovate and also show their talents to the prospective employers, and then handholding between the employers and the student. So that's the kind of a thing we need to look at, really, if you want to be there anywhere in the education. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Raghav, you said a lot and all relevant, and possibly you can lead this panel and where it is headed, and you have a more ringside view of what is likely to come in the future by looking at data, at least directionally, if not specific. What are your final comments?
I'll say two quick things, Anuragji. One, I think we've spoken about industry-academia partnership, and I'll take an example very quickly from Coursera. Today, there are 55 companies who've created 650 courses on the Coursera platform, and these courses have been taken by 11 million people. So Facebook is teaching digital marketing, Google is teaching cloud, Salesforce is teaching sales, and IBM is teaching data science. And this is a fantastic example of industry-academia collaboration, because content has been created, millions of people are taking it, and so on. What would be wonderful for us to do next, which is one of my own aspirations, is to get leading Indian companies to author content as well, so that we can take that to millions of people, take that to academia as well. And so, the Tatas and Infosys and Mahindra and Ashok Leyland and so on should also be creating online content, because then that allows access. And I think the second thing, which as I've been listening to everybody, I would say, I think it sounds like many new things need to be discovered. COVID has clearly brought about more change than we've ever seen in higher education. But I think fast pace of change and having a mindset to be able to be a lifelong learner seem to be the consistent themes that at least we are thinking about on our side as well.
Thank you so much. We're 10 minutes above time. There are 5 questions. There is Suresh Bulusu, who's acknowledging your comments and what work you do, all of you. And he's saying, can all the people on this panel collaborate to make an impact? And he's also talking about if there can be scholarships, if there can be, specifically in the IT sector, he says we need lakhs of people with skills and competence to meet the shortage in areas of cybersecurity, cloud edge computing. So what can we do collectively as a group? Chandrasekhar is saying, there are lots of problems that engineering and business schools are themselves facing. So what can they do? He's talking of tier 2, tier 3. He's not talking of tier 1. Suresh Bulasi again has a comment. Then engineer Kanchan Kumar is saying, are these institutes of higher learning giving some thoughts to introduce full-fledged courses on sustainability and climate change? Clearly, that's Mr. Roy Chaudhary is saying that, Suresh Bulasi is again asking, how does academia look at a 5 trillion economy, so on and so forth. So anybody would like to respond to, say, sustainability education? Raghav, is that something that you see in demand, especially from an investing standpoint? ESG investing is important. it is, it is becoming an important criteria. Do you see a course in sustainability being in demand?
I wouldn't say that has been the case from what data tells us so far. I think it is a topic which still needs to emerge at a much larger level for us as humanity in general. Last year, one of the most popular courses was the science of happiness. When our happiness as humanity came into question, the science of happiness went up to 3 million enrollments from Yale University. I don't think we've seen a course.
It was a free course. It was a free course, I must tell you.
Yeah.
Nevertheless,
I don't think we've seen sustainability become that important a topic yet. It is definitely a topic, but I don't think we've seen that level of adoption in terms of content on a topic like sustainability yet.
Thank you. I'd like to close it now. Dr. Sudhir Jain wants to make a final point. Dr. Jain, go ahead.
I just want to say that everything should not be talked, like sustainability to be experienced. Right? In IIT Gandhinagar, we don't use plastic bottles for water. We don't use disposable cups and disposable paper plates in our canteens, in our chai ka shops and things like that. We actually practice sustainability and we prepare our students for having a mindset of being sustainable. We do solid waste segregation. We actually sell, every little piece of solid waste that we can. This is what is needed. You don't teach everything. You don't think that you can teach sustainability in a class. You practice sustainability.
Thank you so much. I think you're right. Learning is experiential, and what people see in your behavior, they imbibe, and then it becomes a way of life. My gist is that to create the Education 4.0 environment, collaboration is not essential. It is a need of the hour. It is it should get deeper. One of the panelists used the word deep relationships, genuine relationships. I think the deep and genuine relationships can only happen when we all align ourselves towards the common goal of improve the quality of professionals that we bring out. And as Dr. Sudhir Jain rightly said, not being focused on the first job they have to get, but being focused on lifelong learning, and employability should be an automatic outcome of that, right? So clearly, I think that's the outcome that we all want to take. I would like to thank Mr. Raghav Gupta, Professor Raghuram ji, Dr. Vishal Singh, Dr. Sudhir Jain, and definitely last not the least, the director of IIT Guwahati, Dr. Raghuram, for joining us, and grateful for all your comments, inputs. We'll see you next Wednesday. Dr. T.G. Sitharam, Dr. T.G. Sitharam is the director of IIT Guwahati. Thank you, Dr. T.G. Sitharam, and we look forward to more interactions. And I have no doubt in some time, we'll possibly not need to do a discussion around collaboration. What are the changes in the course curricula needed? Coursera and other edtech platforms are already household names, and they're a way of, like we don't talk about some things which become part of our life because they become such deep part of our life that we don't talk about them. I'm sure, hopefully in some years, maybe in some months, we'll be at a position where we don't have to discuss it because it's already happened. So I look forward to that. On behalf of BW Education and BW Business World, I thank all of our panelists and thank all the participants of the webinar, people who joined on Zoom, people who joined on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and on our platform, businessworld.in and on bweducation.com for joining this BW Education webinar. We've completed 1 year of BW Education Wednesday Wisdom, and we look forward to doing this every week with you and learning from you and bringing all the stakeholders together. Thank you so much. I'll sign off for today. Have a great week and stay safe in your home. Technology can help you do a lot of meetings, lots of work, a lot of education. You don't have to step out of home. You can do it from the confines of your home. We know that it is possible. And I would dare to say that in some cases, it is even more efficient and it leads to more productivity. So I'd leave it at that. And it saves in travel time. It saves in parking time. It saves in fuel. So, and it also keeps you safe. So clearly work out of home or work from anywhere you're working from. I think that'll keep you safe. Thank you so much. Good evening. God bless you. Thank you, Mr. Gupta. Thank you, Professor Raghuram. Thank you, Dr. Vishal Singh. Thank you, Dr. Jain. And last but not the least, Dr. T.G. Sitharam Thank you so much. I won't get your name wrong. Dr. T.C. Sitharam from IIT Guwahati. And I look forward to doing more interaction with you. Good evening. God bless
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.